Let's welcome in our next guest, Brian Baldinger, who's going to be a weekly guest for us. He does great work over at NFL Network, Fox Sports, Compass Media Networks, football analyst, Odyssey, NFL, Sky Sports analyst, and of course, Baldy's Breakdowns. Brian, is there any company you don't work for? It seems like you just cover it all.
I've got I like going to the bank. I like cashing checks. Somebody, my phone rings and asks me if I want to do this. I try to create a puzzle and fit it in, and here I am. So right now I'm pretty full, but I'm enjoying all of it.
Man, we're so pumped that you're joining us on a weekly basis to get your breakdowns. And I mean, your Baldy's breakdowns on Twitter are incredible. So everyone's got to follow him on Twitter to get these breakdowns where you break down every single game in the week, don't you?
Yes.
Yeah.
I just got to Detroit and Seattle just today, but I've watched all or parts or most of the other 15 games this week. So it's been a challenge, but I've been able to do it, and I've learned a lot, during the process as well.
Yeah, and it's really impressive. I mean, you go to his Twitter on Monday or Tuesday, and he's already broke down a lot of the Broncos. And so I want to just get your general view on the Broncos right now. What's your biggest takeaway of the Broncos through the first 2 weeks of the season? Obviously not the start they were hoping for.
Well, I think it starts up front. The offensive line's been disappointing. Russell Wilson has been hit 18 times and sacked 9 in 75 pass attempts. And, Washington last week hit him 14 times. That's the most any quarterback's been hit in this league in the first 2 weeks of the season. So, it starts there. Now, they got the big plays. Obviously Marvin Mims, one play, 60 yards, touchdown. You got the Hail Mary, touchdown. But it's been hard to sustain offense, because Russell's been on the move and, they haven't run the ball particularly well. That's that part. And then defensively, they just haven't been good in the first 2 games, whether it was Jimmy Garoppolo or last week's game. They haven't really affected the quarterback. I know they've got a couple of sacks out there, but they really haven't affected the quarterback. They haven't taken the ball away, and that's been a big thing right now. They're one of 4 teams in the league that doesn't have a single takeaway. And so they're not giving the ball back to the offense at all right now.
Yeah, when you look at that offensive line, obviously the numbers are rough, but what do you think is going wrong up there? Like, is it chemistry? Do they not know their assignments? Like, do you know what's going on?
Well, look, McGlinchey had troubles last week. That's a good front, in Washington. They pay those guys, their high draft picks, whether it's Montez Sweat or Chase making his debut or Payne and Allen, they pay those guys a lot of money. They're good players, and even the backups are good players. Jimmy Smith-Williams, they're good. And so they got beat one-on-one quite a few times. And even in max protection, they were getting beat. And Russell wasn't trusting it in the second half. And so he was starting to move probably earlier than he needed to or wanted to. He's made a lot of good throws from the pocket. But when he felt like there was pressure, he was moving. And when he's on the move, that's when he fumbled on the outside. Kind of a crazy play. I'm not sure what he was trying to do with the ball. But, that was a costly play. Interception by Forbes was, a pressure type situation. So, you're not going to get clean, perfect pockets all the time. And Russell's not going to stay there all the time. He never had. So they have to learn how to protect him, and he has to learn how to work with them.
Yeah, so I know that we talked about the Denver Broncos offensive line, and you're great at breaking down offensive linemen, being a former offensive lineman yourself. I want to talk to you a little bit about this Miami Dolphins offensive line. They have some good players, Teron Armstead, who I played with in New Orleans. What should be the Broncos' key to getting pressure on Tua? I know we haven't had much pressure, haven't affected the quarterback. How would the Broncos affect this offensive line?
We'll see if Teron plays. He has been out, and they've been playing backup guys, but they played well. Tua gets rid of the ball quickly. They use a lot of play action. Okay, almost every single play is off of play action. Every single run has a play action pass for it. And so it kind of freezes you just unless you can get them, in second and third and long situations where it's just shotgun drop, and go pin your ears back. They haven't been in those situations a lot. So that's that part of it. And then, look, you have to be careful. Those 2 guys on the outside, whether it's Waddle or Hill, the Patriots did a good job of taking them away for the most part last week. But on any given play, they could get behind you. And Tua's got a great touch. Just got a great touch of the ball right now. And last week when they took the deep ball away, late in the game, Raheem Mostert hit him for 43 and a touchdown to break the game open. But the key is to really challenge those receivers at the line and make sure, unlike the Chargers didn't do, make sure you have somebody over the top. And because if they beat you at the line, the ball's going to that receiver right away. And so on every single play in Miami, you're going to get a motion, you're going to get a shift. So you got to know what the final formation is. And because the formation is basically going to tell you the play for the most part.
You just touched on it a little bit, but what did Bill Belichick in that Patriots defense do to hold the Dolphins 24 points? I think the Broncos could live with only giving up 24 points to this Dolphins team. They can't live with giving up 36 like the Chargers did in Week 1. What's something that the Broncos can take away from that Patriots game?
Well, I mean, they basically played a zone defense. They played an inverted cover 2. There was, Anthony Gonzalez back there, and he makes a pick. He baits Tua to throw the ball to Tyreek. Look, Tyreek had 5 catches for 40 yards. If you walk out of, that stadium on Sunday afternoon and Tyreek has 5 catches for 40 yards, you're going to have a chance to win the game, just the way the Patriots did. But you can't let Raheem Mostert, do what he did. And so that's the balance. Do you play your safeties back and play a 7-man front in a light box and say, okay, our front has got to handle the run game, and we're just not going to give you Waddle and Tyreek Hill behind us. It's a dance, and it's a balance, but that's what the Patriots really did a good job of. They really did a good job of balancing that until late in the fourth quarter when Mostert hit that 43-yard touchdown run, and there was Gonzalez and a safety, 15 yards deep, and they just didn't squeeze it fast enough, and his speed, ran by you. And that's the other thing is that. Look, Mike McDaniel, it's revenge of the nerds, guys. Like, he's that's who he is. But the one thing he knows is speed kills. And so they got it everywhere in that lineup. And if you blink, you make a mistake, you don't hit your protections just right, you're late with it, you have a bad angle with these guys, they're by you. The Chargers found that out Week 1.
Yeah, I mean, if they don't have Jaylen Waddle, how much does that change the offense? Are you able to kind of just lock in on Tyreek and maybe double team him, bracket him somehow so that you can emphasize the run game more?
Oh, I think that certainly you can then say, okay, Tyreek is not going to beat us. Mm-hmm. And whoever they put out there, at that position, we got to be good enough with Surtain or Simmons, whoever, whatever packages you have out there to be able to handle a number 3 or lower, whether it's River Craycraft, had a good game against the Patriots. Like, you're going to get their second or third or fourth best receiver, and they can't run like Jaylen Waddle. So you got to make sure that no matter, and they put Tyreek Hill, they put him in the backfield, they put him in the slot, they create formations for him so that you can't just line up and say, here he is. He's always on the move. So you have to be able to adjust. Vance is going to have to adjust to wherever he is. But wherever he goes, like if I was Denver, I would make sure I had a cloud over the top of him, no matter where he's at. And whatever you have underneath, whether it's a bracket, whether it's man, whether it's some kind of zone, I got to make sure there's somebody over the top of him at all times.
On the other side of the ball, I think the biggest debate that's going to be happening in Broncos country this week leading up to the game is how should the Broncos offense and Sean Payton approach this game? Should they try to play keep away and have very long, sustained drives so that Jaylen Waddle, Tyreek Hill are on the side for a long time, but minimize the possessions like they did against the Raiders? Or should they try for those big shots and try to keep up with the firepower with deep shots?
I don't know if you can play that style. I don't think they're good enough to play that style. I mean, then you got to play mistake-free football. You just got to keep marching these long drives, and you dink and dunk, and like you just, penalties, turnovers, all those things affect it. The score of the game affects that. Like, I think you have to attack. Like, the one thing I would say that, and this has been in both games now, like, Sean Payton is maniacal about red zone offense. And they missed a couple shots last week. They settled for field goals, did the same thing against the Raiders. Like, they've got to convert when they're down there. I thought Russell was late Week 1 with a couple of throws down there. Last week, like, they need, sometimes you could draw up all the great red zone offense you want. Sometimes, a big receiver, a big tight end. You just got to put the ball on top of the rim and let him go get it. And I don't know that they have that guy right now, but that's kind of where you got to go sometimes. But they got to convert when they're down there. You've got to get touchdowns, and they haven't done that. And, they got some explosive plays last week. That's good. But I don't know that you can say, let's play keep away from this offense. Like that, to me, you're playing not to win. Like, I think you got to take your shots in this game.
When you look at the Broncos receivers, how do you think they kind of shake out? Cortland Sutton and Jerry Jeudy have kind of been co-number ones for the last couple of years. You've got Marvin Mims, who's made a couple good plays. To you, as more of like an outside perspective, is there kind of a clear pecking order in the way that those touches should be spread out?
Not really. I mean, Jerry Jeudy hasn't been healthy enough or consistent enough to be a clear number one. He's a good route runner, but he's dropped balls. He's been injured. Things have happened to him. Cortland Sutton is a big guy that knows how to use his body. He's not going to just run by people. I'm kind of interested. I was interested even last year in Brandon Johnson and what he can be. And obviously we saw, Marvin Mims get behind, the second year in Washington last week. I'd like to see more of him, but I don't think, and I don't see this offense where, at one point in New Orleans, there was Michael Thomas and you can't guard Mike. And even though he's not the fastest guy, like you couldn't cover him. Like, I don't see that type of player right now in Denver at that receiver position.
Yeah, so this Broncos team has been pretty good in the first 15 plays to start a game, whether it's the Raiders game or last week. They've kind of been able to put together drives, score on their initial drives, and really looked good. But something happens at halftime where that offensive line starts to crumble. Russ isn't there making his shots downfield. What do the Broncos need to do to be more aggressive and create plays in the second half of games?
Well, I think sometimes you got to come out of that tunnel and you just have to, you have to have a firm plan like you do on Friday with your first 15 or how you're scripting plays. And it's just got to be, this is the plan. This is what we've seen. This is what we have to execute. This is what was unforeseen that they're doing. This is what our adjustment is. I mean, I don't think you should wait till halftime to adjust when you see something that you weren't prepared for. I think you got to do that on the sideline. And, that's where the communication with Russell and Sean comes in and everybody else, not just those two, but everybody else. But they certainly have to play better up front. And Russell, if they do, Russell has to trust that protection. I've seen him trust it, and I've seen the ball come out fast. I've seen it come out on time, and I've seen some good plays. But I feel like that has to be a more consistent thing in the second half.
This has just been incredible insight, and we'll get you out of here on this. Do the Broncos have a chance at pulling off the upset this weekend?
I always think teams have a chance. Like you have to find a way to steal a possession, whether it's onside kick, fake punt. Like, you got to go into your bag. You got to go deep in your bag. You get a possession here. They don't have a takeaway. It'd be good if they took the ball away and gave, Russell a short field or an extra at bat. Like, those things, all those things can help. And so sometimes when it looks the darkest, like this looks pretty dark.
Yep.
And everybody's saying, well, what if they go to 0-3? Well, okay. Well, let's make like this is where coaching does come in. This is where you find a way to win a game. Whether it's game planning or whether, it'd be good if Patrick Surtain said, you know what, Tyreek, go throw it to Tyreek. I'm taking it away this week. Like your star players have to act like stars and they got to step up. And so it'd be good if Randy Gregory goes out and beats an average right tackle, and gets the ball out of his hands from the blind side. Like, that'd be a good play. So I just believe your stars, the people you pay a lot of money to, they got to show up in these kind of games.
Man, I love it. I'm believing. You got me believing. Thanks so much for joining us, Brian. We can't wait for your breakdown next week. And everyone, make sure to go give him a follow. Thanks so much. We love the insight.
It's great to be part of the team, guys. I'll talk to you next week.
Right on. Thanks, Brian.